What happens when the CEO of a popular retail chain goes undercover and witnesses blatant racism in his own store? The shocking moment sets off a chain of events that transforms not just the store, but the entire company, changing lives in ways no one could have predicted. Mark had always been a hands-off leader, trusting his management team to run the day-to-day operations of his popular retail chain. As the CEO, his role was to steer the company at a high level, leaving the details to others. But lately, he'd been hearing unsettling rumors, whispers of discontent among the employees, complaints about how customers were being treated, and concerns over workplace morale. He knew that being at the top often meant being out of touch with what was really happening at the ground level. Curious and eager to get a first-hand account, Mark decided to take matters into his own hands. He would visit one of the stores, incognito. Ditching his usual suit and tie for a simple jacket and jeans, he blended in with the customers. No one would know he was the CEO, and that's exactly what he wanted. He needed to see what went on when the higher-ups weren't around to oversee things. Walking through the store's entrance, Mark immediately noticed the hustle and bustle of a busy afternoon. Employees seemed to be rushing about, some assisting customers, others distracted by their own conversations. Mark observed quietly, trying not to draw attention to himself, but his mind was racing with questions. Would the rumors be true? Was the store's environment as chaotic and disorganized as he'd been hearing? Most importantly, how did his employees treat the people they were supposed to serve? Mark was determined to find out. Mark stepped into the store during peak hours, the midday rush bringing a constant hum of activity. Customers were scattered around the aisles, some browsing, others lining up at the checkout. The employees, while moving quickly, seemed scattered, trying to juggle multiple tasks at once. Mark was momentarily taken aback by the store's high energy. There was a sense of chaos in the air, but it was familiar, a typical busy retail day. However, he was determined to stay focused, watching the employees' interactions with the customers, trying to gauge the true pulse of the place. As he wandered through the aisles, he couldn't help but notice the way some employees seemed more engaged with certain customers, while others were left to fend for themselves. Then, the scene shifted. The front door swung open, and in walked a woman of color, holding the hand of her young child. Immediately, the atmosphere seemed to change. Mark noticed a shift in the behavior of the staff, almost imperceptible at first. One employee, Samantha, who had been helping a group of white customers, glanced at the woman and her child, and then quickly looked away. The woman approached the counter, her small son clutching a toy in his hand, and asked for assistance in finding a product. Instead of greeting her warmly or offering help, Samantha barely acknowledged her presence. She pointed in the general direction of the aisle without making eye contact. Mark felt a pang of discomfort. He watched as the woman, trying to stay calm, turned and walked away, her child still tugging at her sleeve. The disparity was too clear to ignore. Mark stood in the corner, his eyes fixed on the interaction unfolding before him. The woman had picked up a few items and approached the counter, but Samantha, the sales associate, didn't greet her with the same enthusiasm she'd shown the previous customers. Instead, she glanced at the woman from head to toe, her expression hardening as she muttered under her breath, just loud enough for Mark to hear, "I don't think you can afford any of this stuff." The woman froze for a moment, visibly hurt by the remark. She quickly masked her discomfort, maintaining a calm demeanor as she tried to brush it off. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "Could you help me find a size 5 in this jacket?" Samantha barely looked up. Without acknowledging the woman's request, she turned her attention to a white customer who had just entered the store. With a bright smile, she began assisting the new customer, completely ignoring the woman still standing at the counter. Mark felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. He had heard rumors of issues with customer service, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. The woman stood there, her face flushed with embarrassment, as she quietly gathered her things. Mark's heart sank as he saw her begin to walk away, her shoulders slightly hunched. The blatant racism was undeniable, and Mark knew he couldn't stand by any longer. His instincts kicked in, and without thinking twice, he moved toward the counter, ready to confront the situation head-on. This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a clear violation of everything his company stood for. Mark felt his pulse quicken as he approached the counter, his mind racing with the gravity of the situation. The woman had already started to walk toward the door, her head held high despite the hurt that clearly lingered. He couldn't let this moment pass without addressing the behavior he had just witnessed. As he caught up with her, Mark gently placed his hand on her shoulder. She turned, startled, and Mark quickly introduced himself. "I'm Mark, the CEO of this company. I'm so sorry for what just happened. That was completely unacceptable." The woman looked at him, her expression a mix of surprise and cautious hope. Mark smiled reassuringly before turning to the rest of the store, his voice steady but firm. "Everyone, may I have your attention, please?" Mark called out, his gaze sweeping over the staff, who were all now staring in disbelief. "What I just witnessed here is not just a mistake, it's a violation of our values. At this company, we treat all customers with respect, dignity, and fairness, no matter their background, appearance, or anything else." He paused, making sure the weight of his words landed. To the sales associate who made the comment, "I want to be clear, that is not the kind of behavior we tolerate. You will be receiving additional training and support to understand why this matters. We are all responsible for creating an inclusive, welcoming environment here." Turning back to the woman, Mark addressed her directly, his voice softening. "I apologize for the way you were treated. I promise you, we are working to ensure this never happens again." The woman, though still visibly shaken, gave a small nod, her eyes glistening with gratitude. Mark's heart ached for her, but he felt a sense of resolve. He had taken the first step in righting a wrong, and this moment would echo far beyond the store's walls. The woman stood still for a moment, her eyes wide in disbelief as she processed Mark's revelation. For a brief second, she seemed unsure whether to accept his apology or remain guarded. But as Mark continued to speak, she slowly relaxed, her shoulders loosening, and a small, grateful smile began to form on her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I didn't expect this. I didn't expect anyone to stand up for me like this. It means more than you know." Mark nodded, genuinely touched by her words. "I'm so sorry you had to experience that," he replied. "No one should ever feel that way in our stores. We're committed to making things right." Samantha, standing off to the side, shifted uncomfortably. Her face had flushed with shame as she absorbed Mark's words. She opened her mouth to speak, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry. I didn't think about how my words would affect her. I never should have said that." She looked down, clearly regretting her actions. I never realized what I was doing." Mark's gaze softened as he addressed her. "It's important that we all reflect on our actions and how they affect others. This is an opportunity for growth, not just for you but for all of us." He placed a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of reassurance. "I'm confident you can do better, and we'll support you." Turning back to the woman and her child, Mark gave them a sincere apology once more. "Please know that what happened today is unacceptable. We are taking steps to ensure this never happens again at any of our stores." The woman nodded, her child still holding her hand, and for the first time in a while, Mark felt like he had made a meaningful difference. In the days following the incident, the atmosphere in the store began to shift. Mark's decision to take immediate action sparked a ripple effect throughout the company. Word spread quickly about what had transpired, and the employees at the store were reminded of the core values that the company stood for: respect, fairness, and inclusion. Mark, alongside his management team, launched a company-wide training initiative focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The sessions encouraged employees to reflect on their behaviors, understand their biases, and commit to fostering a welcoming environment for everyone, regardless of race or background. At the same time, store managers began implementing more rigorous checks to ensure customer interactions were aligned with the company's values. In-store displays were updated with reminders about kindness, respect, and customer care. As a result, the overall energy in the store felt more positive. Employees were more engaged with customers, offering help with a smile, and genuinely striving to create a better experience. Weeks later, the woman returned to the store with her child. This time, however, her experience was entirely different. She was greeted with warmth and respect by every staff member she encountered. A sales associate even went out of their way to help her find the exact jacket she had been looking for, engaging in friendly conversation along the way. The woman left the store that day with a sense of satisfaction and gratitude, confident that things had changed for the better. The incident served as a catalyst for a broader movement within the company, sparking ongoing initiatives to champion diversity and inclusion. The transformation was felt not just within the store, but in the company's corporate culture, with policies and practices now actively supporting equality at every level. Mark sat quietly in his office, looking out the window as he reflected on the events that had unfolded over the past few weeks. His decision to visit the store incognito had been born out of curiosity, but it had led to something much bigger than he'd ever imagined. It had been a moment of discomfort, a moment that forced him to confront a serious issue within his company, but it was also a turning point, one that had sparked a wave of positive change. Sometimes, it took those uncomfortable moments to shake people awake and show them what needed to be done. As he thought about the woman who had been treated so unfairly, he felt a deep sense of pride. Not just because he had intervened in that moment, but because his actions had set in motion a much-needed transformation within the company. The employees were now more aware of their responsibilities, and the store's culture was beginning to shift toward one of respect and inclusion. Mark knew that true change wasn't just about one isolated incident. It was about creating a foundation that supported those values day in and day out. Smiling to himself, Mark leaned back in his chair. The store was flourishing. Customers were coming in, not just because of the products, but because of the atmosphere that had been created. The employees were more engaged, more respectful, and more committed to making every person who walked through the door feel valued. Mark had led his company through a significant shift, and he was proud to know that the lives of both the customers and employees had been changed for the better. He had made a difference, and that was enough to keep him moving forward with renewed purpose.